come and engage with me on this topic of dealing with loss and dealing with grief and bereavement in this colonial times, because it is quite a big issue. A lot of people have lost loved ones.
Yeah.
A lot of people have lost things that are valuable to them. It could have been properties that they owned, but they lost jobs. They could not afford to pay it anymore. They lost relationships. They lost so many things. And the thing about the grieving process, it doesn't have to be the loss of a person or the death of a loved one for one to undergo some form of grieving process. And that also has implications for our mental health. And that is the main reason why I wanted us to have that conversation. Maybe you can just, as a start, take us through your understanding of how these two are related, the experience of loss and the implications that it has on our mental health.
Sure. So any form of loss causes a stressor, obviously, right, to your psyche. It's a stressor to your life. And one of the things that, I mean, I think we wanted a conversation about what mental health is, and we mentioned that anything that causes stress in your life, right? The people are disturbing me.
So I'm sorry. I'm trying to also just quieten them.
So anything that's gonna bring some, like you were having a life that was stable, and then this thing comes and it acts as a stressor. It stresses your psyche, stresses your emotions, your just your life. So you can't go through any stress, loss, death, whatever it is, without that affecting your mental health, right? Because essentially your mental health is that it's just overall well-being, but mostly of your emotions, of your, so that which causes grief is going to affect your mental well-being. So it's like someone asking if I have a car accident and I bruise my arm, will that affect my physical health? So it's like it's a given. Absolutely, it will. Anything that acts as a stressor in your life, and grief and loss and pain act as those. In fact, if you look at some of the most common psychological disorders, one thing that they have in common, what makes you susceptible to developing that mental health disorder is any form of stressor. In fact, if you think about major depressive disorder, and there's research that says if there's a person in your family line that, if you are genetically predisposed to the development of that disorder, you can very well be okay if there's no stressor in your life. Now, a combination of environmental factors or lifestyle factors and that genetic predisposition will cause you, to have depression, for example, or bipolar, whatever other disorder you think of.
Okay, that's a powerful thing, and I think it's a good way for us to start, because I did speak about some of those things in my last week's session about some of the causes of mental health problems. So this issue of grief, what I'm getting from what you're saying is that this issue of grief, the experience of loss, is one of the triggers, can be one of the causes, especially for people who are predisposed. For example, who have genetic predispositions to things. Maybe in the family, somebody has had some sort of depression in their lives, and genetically they are predisposed to that. But now the question, I think the biggest issue right now in a lot of people's lives is the fact that there is so much loss that is happening. Secondly, culturally and traditionally in South Africa, this issue of mental health has not been something that we have taken as serious as we take physical health. And that is evident in how it's not an integral part of our primary healthcare system. At least not as strong as it should be, And now the third thing that is happening is that the way things have changed, how we deal with funerals, how we deal with grieving, has changed because of the rules surrounding, these COVID-19 regulations. We can, as a people, especially Black people, we are a people who rely a lot on community. And when somebody has passed away, the comfort comes from the presence of your neighbors, your family members, your extended family members, friends, and friends of friends coming in to console and comfort you. But that has been lost, right? First question I want to ask in relation to that, what is the significance of dealing with loss intentionally and not let it be something that we say time will heal?
Sure. So if we do not intentionally deal with any stressor, any pain, any form of loss, then you are just going throughout your life with a wound, right? And what happens to a wound? A wound gets infected because anything that will, you know, emotionally, it's like you're walking around with an emotional wound. And so you are constantly triggered. And because you are constantly triggered, you are not optimally functioning. So you are not Thandokazi who's living her purpose, who's living out, you know, her life the way that you are supposed to be doing. Because it's like, again, having a wound, and because it's exposed now to whatever, like if the weather changes and you have an infection, you know, then you remember, oh, I've got a wound and it's so painful. So everything will become a trigger for you. And in fact, everything then also just becomes very difficult. Like you go through your life with more difficulty than you would have if you were just intentionally dealing with it. And when you speak about intentionally dealing with loss, you're not asking a person to wake up and tell people that I'm fine, you know? But the first step is to accept that this is painful. And, you know, and because I've experienced this form of stressor, you know, it's painful. It's not normal, you know, and it's not, the pain I'm feeling is not your normal pain. You were watching the news and you saw pain, you know, happening in Alaska. No, it's you know, it's, you have lost a big part of your life and thus cannot function optimally.
Sure. That's very key, Thando. The issue of acceptance. I think that's the takeaway from what you just said now. The issue of acceptance, and not only accepting that it happened, right? But also accepting the fact that it's painful.
Yeah.
I think that's a very powerful thing. And okay, let's say now I have been through this process of acceptance and I accept that it's painful. But what do I do with the pain?
What do I do with the pain? Oh, I don't want to say time will heal, because there are people who will tell you that, you know, with time, things then started getting better for me. I don't think it's time healing you more than I think you learn to live with that pain. And because you are intentionally, you are aware that I'm in pain, this is painful, and you are constantly, you are dealing with it, right? And some of the ways that you will deal with it is that some people journal, some people form, you know, enter into support groups, some people will go to therapy, which I highly recommend. Some people will take a break and shut down and go home, do whatever you need to do, you know, whatever healing practice that you need to you need to do. And I don't think pain is supposed to, you know, like it's this thing that's supposed to vanish, because, you know, and I know how cliche it sounds, you know, I read like a quote from someone who was speaking about how, you know, grieving a loved ones and being in pain and feeling that pain is just a reminder to yourself that you love this person and this was the person that mattered to you, you know, and you are constantly then keeping them in your, you know, in your spirit, in your mind. You're constantly thinking about them and just keeping them alive in memory through talking about the person and all of that. So I don't think we should be focusing on, let me remove the pain. It's gonna be painful, and maybe it should be painful, and you should just it should be painful. You've just lost something significant in your life.
Yeah, and it's a human being we're talking about,
right?
That occupied a particular position in your life and in your heart.
Absolutely.
And I also find that one of the conversations that, or things that people often say, this whole idea of life goes on. it's something that a lot of people say when they're either consoling themselves or trying to force themselves to forget about the pain that they're experiencing because of their loss. They will say, ah, man, life goes on. He passed away, or I've lost the job, or I've lost the business. Life goes on. And we try so much to quickly get over it. And that's another thing. That's the second thing that people say. But, ah, man, get over it. This person, it's been a long time. Why are you still, holding on to that? Just get over it. So I find that in those ways of thinking, we try and bury the pain instead of healing the pain. And what happens is what you spoke about earlier, the whole idea of triggers. Because when the pain is buried, something will happen that will trigger the memory of that person, the memory of what you lost, the memory of the relationship you lost, what could have become if you'd continued to work at the job that you had. And that will mess you up big time, because this is what happened. The analogy of the wound that you spoke about, when the wound is covered and it's not healed, it becomes septic, right?
Sure.
And when the wound becomes septic, for it to heal, it has got to be cleaned.
Yes.
And the process of cleaning the wound, it's very painful, right? It's very painful. And that is what happened when people bury their pain. In the future, it catches up with them, and they'll have to go back and open up that can of worms and open up that wound and clean that wound when they are now forced to. And that's like reliving the pain and the trauma that comes with it. But I want to get to this point. You did touch on it, but I want you to elaborate on it a bit more. Can you ever get over loss? Is loss something that you get over, like completely heal from it?
I've never heard of any person saying, I got over it and, like, right. So, and I mean, I think that's not, I want to respond to that question by just touching on my own life, right? Because I did commit to being quite vulnerable in this session and not to be a psychologist or an academic. So I lost my mother in 2004. And so I lost my mother in 2004. I lost my father last year. And both, and I'm grieving them differently. And I'm saying grieving because I'm still grieving my mother. And it's very difficult because I was very young when my mother passed away. So I have had to keep her in my mind over the years and keep her alive, through conversing, through talking about her, writing about her. And I dream about her. I ask questions about her, and I keep her alive in that manner. And I would never, ever want to wake up one day and forget Mama, because I think then that would be more loss than the loss I've already experienced. But I speak about my mother very differently now than I do about my father. Because my father...
What's the difference?
So my father passed away a year ago. My father passed away a year ago, and I had 29 years with him. I'm not saying, one is better, one is, so let's just set that straight. But it's painful either way. And there's you don't wish for it to happen when you're at a certain age. But what's different is that I have had time to grieve my mother. I have had time to think about her, to go through, and I have messed myself up because, not really messed, I think I'm being hard when I say I've messed myself up, but I did not have the right tools to deal with the loss. As a result, I've lost so many relationships because I like friendships, like people were coming close to me and realizing that, I'm very anxious, avoidant, as a way of protecting myself. Like I've developed defense mechanisms over the years that push people away from me, that make me want to be alone and yongelande. So, but over the years, I have learned tools to deal with it. But to put that it's very recent. And because it's like now you don't have parents. And so it's a different kind of pain. It's not like I've lost my mother, I still have significant people in my life. I still have my father.
Sure.
And, you know, like my relationship with my father was great, you know, like sort of like just good. And so, like the loss of him, like I'm grieving him differently because I also knew him intimately. Like he passed away when I was an adult. We were at that stage where we're friends now, where I miss you, guy. I go, you know, I want to go home. Like I'm not at that stage where like you want to be with your friends more than you want to be at home. I want to spend time with this person. And this person has, you know, like I remember him so well. He also was just a part of my life, kakulu, than my mother, who was my mother and very significant in my life, whom I've lost, 15 years ago, right? And was, you know, and at times I felt that I did not know her. And that was a betrayal and a loss on its own, because you are in pain, you are grieving, and you're grieving the fact that I was robbed. Like God really robbed me here, you know? So it's different, but it's not worth comparing one from the other, because it's just pain, right? It's just pain. And there's a beautiful thing that happens. Like, I know when I'm missing my mother, and I know when I'm missing my father. I know when I'm grieving my brother. I know when I'm grieving my grandfather. It's very distinct. Like the mind just knows, and the body and the body knows. And I mean, we can talk about the link between the body and the mind. But yeah, I hope I answer you.
Yeah, no, that's a very powerful answer, and I think it's also very relatable in a sense that you spoke about your own experience. And I see people want us to get to the tools that you are speaking about. I see some comments coming in. We will get to that, but there's also a question that I wanted to ask you, maybe something to elaborate on, because you touched on how you are grieving these people differently, you know, and I think that is a powerful thing. But also there is difference in how, as different people, we grieve, right? So you might grieve differently from how I would grieve the loss of my parent.
Absolutely.
Right? And you as a friend and as a person who's close to me would not have to expect me to grieve the same way as you would. For example, you spoke about how initially you kind of ended up losing some of the friendships because we were kind of ambivalent at the time. And I think if we understood how the fact that people grieve differently, I think people would have expected, at the time, people may have expected that you would allow a lot of people to come close because you need their support and they know you need their support. But they were met with this ambivalent behavior. And others might have left you thinking that you are pushing them away, rather than dealing with your grief differently from how people generally deal with grief. And I think that is where sometimes the confusion happens and people lose people, and you end up feeling like you are by yourself because people are just failing to understand that you are grieving differently
and it
from
just
them.
Different.
And yeah, it just looks different from how they would deal with it. I know, for example, I don't think I'm a person who would talk a lot about losses until I fully process them in my mind and somehow have come to terms with it and have made peace. Then I would be comfortable to talk about it, and as emotional as it is. But someone else needs to talk about it, about the emotions as they come and as they happen. And that happens differently for different people. And I think this is a point I just want to make, that we must understand that people grieve their losses, they deal with their losses differently. But that does not mean we should not be supporting them.
Absolutely. And I mean,
just because they grieve differently from how we do it.
Yeah. So another lesson for me, like what I'm learning from myself for myself, is that, you know, grief looks differently when you are a child and when you are an adult, right? So I was 13 going on 14 when my mother passed away, and then with her passing, we had a lot of, like, we had sudden moves, you know, we moved homes, there was just a lot of instabilities, not really like just like, you know, when a person has gone through loss, family wants to come through, you know what, you know, so there's a change in how things are looking. And I remember how I wanted people to live. Like, I could not wait for the day that it's just my siblings and my father, because I wanted to see how I am. I wanted, because Anita, you are surrounded by all these people and you are thinking you are okay, you are okay. But as young as I was, I just remember how I couldn't wait for people to go so it could be quiet, so that I could see, you know, because at times it also feels like you're not properly grieving this person, because you have just, instead of, you know, processing this pain, you have just, you know, just taken other people in, you know, and now you are not really processing what is happening. But also what happened was, and maybe the mind, not maybe, the mind does protect itself. You know, all these defense mechanisms, at times you speak about them as if they're bad, but at times it's important for you so that you do not crash, that you go through that process where you are almost numb, right? Instead of, because if you just go to acceptance, like, oh, this is what happens, you might crash, right? Because human behavior is also very complex, and we're going to grieve differently, and it's going to look differently to us, and as the years go, it's going to look differently. So a lot of I could pinpoint when I was in varsity, and I mean probably when I was in my second year or third year. And I never connected psychology with the fact that I'd gone through loss. I never intentionally went and said, I'm going to heal people, you know, because I you know, I was just fascinated by the discipline. But there's a lot of things then when I was in varsity, like these tools that I speak of, that I started being aware that, oh, this is why I did this. This is why I do this, you know, and you know, and I guess at that time I already knew that I was going to be a research psychologist, and I started the explaining of human behavior, and I use myself as a case study. But also, you say grief looks differently, and absolutely, even within your intimate space, my sister and I grieve both my parents so differently. My brothers and I, we grieve our parents so differently. And I remember, you know, they're not going to be happy with me, because now I'm just, you know, it's like I'm writing a book and exposing everyone, telling people stories while trying to tell mine. But I remember this instance when it was around 2014, and we were at my sister's house. It was just me and it was the whole family. And I mean, 2014 is like 10 years after Umama had passed.
Yeah.
And we started having this conversation. And for the first time, I realized that I'm not the only person who lost a mother. And I think for the longest time, I had been so selfish in how I think about Umama, how I talk about her. Like, I had portrayed this thing, and as your way, it's like I was the only child. I couldn't even see them. And it hit me. It was so painful to realize that I've gone 10 years without ever checking back. How are you? And how are you dealing? You know, and we do that, and and then I also just learned about, there's so much that I missed out about Umama that I could have gotten from my big brother, for example, who was 16, you know, when my mother passed. So he has other stories that he could be sharing with me, you know, and then we had to find ourselves at that time. I mean, it was 10 years, but hopefully for someone who is on the chat, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't become 10 years.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it is also a very powerful one, because when you're going through that process, you tend to have a more inward looking kind of approach to things, that I'm trying to deal with myself and protecting myself, and forgetting that actually, if it's someone who's a loved one that passed away, there's also a whole lot of other people who are experiencing loss, and they're dealing with it in their own way. And I also like the point you made about how you had a conversation, which is also quite a powerful way of bringing or keeping the good memories of these people alive in your lives, and cherishing their presence, the time that you spent with them, cherishing the good memories and the good times that you had with them, which then is somehow soothing in a way to the pain, because you're remembering the good things and the impact that they've had on your lives. I see there are some questions that are coming on the chats. We will address the questions. Keep them coming. We'll address them towards the end.
No, I'm saying I can't see them,
there.
Maybe that's fine. Like I can't.
Yeah, no, I have them on this phone.
So,
we will address the questions. Please do keep them coming, and remember, please also share this live on your timeline so that other people can also get the kind of content that you're getting. And I think you can see Thandokazi is brilliant at this thing. So Thando, before we move to the issue of mechanisms, and I know people want to get to that, but I think there is also another important place that I want us to touch first before we get to the actual mechanisms. I know you did say you don't want to be very academic about this, but I'm going to push you to that direction just a bit because I think there is something valuable that we can get from that. As a social worker, I've done psychology, I've done social work theory, and we both know about Kubler-Ross and the different stages of grief.
Yeah.
Maybe take us through that. It does not have to be in the order that they happen, because I think it would be helpful for people to understand what kind of things happen when a person is grieving, and the fact that the process is not a linear process, that you just be feeling the same way throughout. And when you are seeing these changes happening in your life, you must understand that it's a normal part of the process of grief. Please do take us through the different stages of grief.
As Kubler-Ross.
It doesn't have to be the Kubler-Ross in the way that Kubler-Ross spoke about it. I just wanted to quote that because I know it's something you've done before.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, that's very important work that, because I mean, when you think about the work of Kubler-Ross, as much as there's a lot of people who came back and said, but it doesn't happen like this, but that's scholarly work. That's what it's supposed to do.
Sure.
Someone puts an idea because, you know, based on the research that they had done with this group of people, this is what they found, that the first stage of grief is denial. So this is when a person would say, you know, because of shock, you are not able to accept that which has happened. And I think the second step would be when a person would bargain, right? So so you're bargaining with God at times, especially if it's death, you know, or also just in your head, I wish I'd done this. If I'd done this, I would have saved this person. You know, and over the years, I have seen some of those in my life, but coming at very different times. Again, to tie with what you're saying, that it's not a linear process. And I think one of the problematic ideas was that is a standard stage, and that there's like stages to grief. And so now I'm grieving, I have to go through a textbook and check, am I, you know, tick, okay, now I've done this, you know. In one day you can easily, and like in one day you can easily go from denial to acceptance. Like in one day you can go through
and go
emotions,
back to denial even,
right? And wake up again, and then it's like that, you know. And I do not think any of these are bad, you know. Again, like I did say that some of them are to, you know, to cushion you, to act as a buffer, to protect you, so that you are also able to just go with the day. But I don't think they're going to look the same for everyone. I think it's important scholarly work. And I think we can build onto that work. And I don't know if there's been other significant people who have contributed to that work, at least in psychology, or maybe I'm missing that work. And I think because we're experiencing so much pain now, there's so many theories that we're going to come across with. But because of the complexity, again, of human behavior, there's no one tool. That's why developmental psychologists are plenty, because it's not even a matter of Erickson fighting with Freud. It's just a matter of the complexity of human behavior. And that for one person, it's going to be 6 stages by age 6. For another person, it's going to be 15 stages by age 90, you know? So I think it's just, it's a nice framework to understand, but I think let's not try and fit ourselves into that model, you know? But there's definitely a lot that we can learn from it.
No, thanks for that response, Thandokazi. Let's get to the mechanisms.
Sure.
But I'm also going to hold you back on the ones on how to cope or deal with grief. I want you to go back to what you said earlier. You spoke about how some of the defense mechanisms can be counterproductive because they can lead to other losses. You spoke about how your own defense mechanisms to some degree led to loss of friendships. And I think that is also something important for us to point out, that sometimes people, as they try to deal with these things and as they try to defend themselves from the pain that they'll be experiencing at the time, there are good or productive and positive defense mechanisms or coping mechanisms, and others are counterproductive. And I spoke about some of these things last week when I was speaking about substance abuse, that some people tend to self-medication with like substances as a way of trying to help themselves forget about the pain. But that is a counterproductive, coping mechanisms, because it only numbs you for a moment, and once you are sober, it comes back. So what are some of the negative coping mechanisms that you have learned about in your research? You've also okay, maybe not in your research, but in your training as a psychologist, but also in your own experience. I know you also read a lot of people like Brene Brown who speak about a lot of these things.
It's very interesting. Again, I mean, I'm learning as I am talking. Like, I'm also just realizing some things, but oh wow, okay. But I mean, I know that's not the platform now. But some of the things that you tend to do is you push people away, right? So I remember how, when you lose a partner, for example, any male figure or the opposite sex, another opposite sex that comes, feels like like, this is someone who's trying to be my husband. This is someone who's trying to be my wife. This person is trying to be my mother. And so you push this person away because in some, like, your mind is just trying to still keep your loved one in memory, in thoughts, So anything that comes, then it feels like it wants to compete with your person. And because you are going through it, you are not able to keep the other party in check. But I know it feels like I'm pushing you away, but the reason I'm pushing you away is because you're coming strongly, and I feel like you are interrupting my grieving process. I feel like you're making me, for example, if it's a husband, then it will feel like I'm cheating on my husband, or I've quickly moved on from my husband, so I need time, So instead of saying that out loud, you push a person away, you become very aggressive, or you just isolate, you pull away from people, and people just feel like you are cold, you are aloof. They were trying to show support. At times, the person is not even trying to be your partner. They're trying to show up, but you represent something I've lost, and I am not ready to have you do that. So that's some of the ways that we would counter. Like you putting a defense, but in the long run, you hurt yourself because you're going to lose that relationship. What I learned later was that because the trauma of losing my mother, again, the tool for me was really psychology, like learning psychology. I try not to psychoanalyze myself. I try not to psychoanalyze those who are around me, but because I do psychology, so when I'm
and that's how you think, basically. Like, that's how you are trained to think. So
it's your world view. Like you have. It's just a tool. Like, it just helps you now. Like everything, even driving. You are always like, it's your theoretical framework. Or research design. So for me, I would learn later that because I lost a parent earlier, I do have attachment issues. And attachment issues stem a lot of times from, like your relationship with the person that raised you, whether it's your mother, your father, or a nanny or your uncle, whoever, right? So that bond, you first learn how to relate to people with that person, right? With your caregiver, right? And when you take that person away, when you take a caregiver away from a child, then the child has to fend for themselves in this world. And you learn tools that are not very healthy, but you figure out that, oh, okay, if I do this, this is what happens. So in my case, the tool that I would learn was to avoid, like to avoid people. Like I avoided getting into relationships. I avoided being in intimate friendships, like being close with people. And also because I have a very strong bond with my siblings, that has always been an excuse for me. But I don't need friends. I've got a big family, I've got loved ones, and so I couldn't go and make friendships and maintain them. Right. And I was sort of avoidant, anxious. Right. So me avoiding people was fear that because people leave, in order for me to not feel the pain that I felt when my mother left me, I will protect myself by not connecting with people so that I protect myself from that pain. Né? But you're going to realize later again, if that's how, if you're going to run with that and think, because it's like, again, you are numbing. So eventually you're going to have to be in a relationship. Eventually, you're a social being, and relationship, whether it's marrying a person, but just relating with with the people around you, you're gonna need to open that door and have people here. So you need to learn a different tool, or at least learn a different way about how do I protect myself, or how do I deal with the fact that people leave, and people leaving, I get hurt because I have this traumatic event that happened to me when I was a child.
Yeah. Okay. One thing before we move on, you keep on saying, then I learned, then I realized later, then I figured this. What is that process? Like what happens in that learning process? How do you get to learn these things that you're talking about?
You have to open the wound, in Toby's, and you have to be very intentional. So now I am now at my big age, I go to therapy. And because I go to therapy, obviously I've learned healthier ways, because I mean, doing psychology and going to therapy is not the same thing. Like I had psychology and still not get the tools. So I needed to go and center myself in a safe space, and and get someone who can rightfully psychoanalyze me in a way that's going to be healthy, right? And then this person helped me to start seeing but this is why I do the things that I do. But also because maybe different from another person, I talk, like I will talk, like it's painful, but I will talk. Like me talking now doesn't mean that I guess she has healed. Like I will talk through the pain, and I'm very clear that my healing will stem from this work. Like I don't have to sit and and this bandage. Like I want to go, because I know I'm very aware. I'm not pretending like I'm fine. I'm letting the people know that I'm still going through this. I had a bad day yesterday. I had a good day on Friday. It's that process. But I think you need to then be very intentional. Then you will learn. So if you're very intentional, it means you notice your behaviors, and you notice your toxicity. Like you realize that, like for example, like I had a friend I loved in varsity. Like I've had a lot of friends that I loved and I lost. And now I see why I lost them, because I'm doing the work. So because I'm doing this emotional work, I'm starting to see that Thandokazi, it was you who was toxic. And that's why this person left, and that doesn't even mean that I need to go back and be like, come, let's talk. No, it's a lesson for me now. But this is why I did the things I did, right? Yeah.
That's a powerful thing, Thandokazi. One of first thing I'm getting from that from what you just said now is the significance of awareness.
Absolutely.
I think I once spoke about this in one of these live sessions, that we should not live our lives like robots, as if we are not emotional beings, but we've got to take time out and reflect and on our experiences, on our feelings, on our relationships, because it is in that process of reflection, in that process of journaling, in that process of talking through things, that we get to be aware of our own
and you see the pattern
behaviors. Because interestingly, toxicity is always something we see in other people.
Outside. It's very internal.
It's always something that we say, this person is very toxic, but we never really see it in our own selves when we actually have our own forms and types of toxicities that when we are not aware of ends up affecting our relationships and how we interact with people. But I'm also getting the point about talking through things. That is an old way of dealing with things. I think we're already getting into the coping mechanisms. Yes. The more you bottle things inside, the more they, I almost said chow you, but the more they consume you and devour you like cancer inside.
Absolutely.
So that issue of talking through things, finding someone that you can trust to be able to speak to about your own feelings, and therapy is another way of dealing with it and getting a safe space. You spoke about a safe space to express your feelings and be vulnerable about what's happening in you without the fear of judgment, without the fear of being seen differently. So that is very much important. Let's now continue with this conversation in terms of what are some of the good coping mechanisms that you have learned in your own experience, but also in your studies of human behavior.
Sure. So I was just reflecting recently that, you know, when you think about boundaries, like setting healthy boundaries is so important. And I would get to see that you know, the importance of that when I lost my father. When I lost my father, I remember how strong my siblings were. I remember how hands-on they were. I remember how they reminded me I'm a child. And I think my default is to want to nurture. My default is to want to be an adult, you know, to shelter other people and shield. Like I would go there. But when I was like, I just told the family that I want to cry and I want you to let me to do this. So my father had passed away in Cape Town, and so I first went to Cape Town. And when I got there, everyone was sort of trying to be okay, like where you can have other conversations. And one of the first things I did was I asked, so how did he die? And you know, like one of my aunts was like, no, but that's not going to help. And I'm like, no, I need you to paint the picture. And I kept doing that over and over and over and over again until I could see it and I could listen to someone tell me without falling apart. So, so that was one. But also creating healthy boundaries also means that you let people in. And I learned in therapy that sometimes people don't know how to show up for you because you're not telling them. So you're not telling them because you're like, people don't owe me. Now, I'm that person. I'm like, people don't owe me love. People don't have to show up for me. If they show up, great. If not, then. But then what happens is when they don't show up and I wanted them to show up, then I'm like, oh, people, you know, I'm hurt. I'm all alone. You know, you have not settled the boundaries and you're not respecting them. So you need to bring people to where you're at and trust that the right people are going to stay. Now, I think, you know, I can bring very uncomfortable conversations. I'm able to have very uncomfortable conversations. And I want my people to be there with me. But I've also learned that because I'm talking to a friend who's also lost parents. So it's important for me to also just check. That's a boundary. Check, friend, is it okay for me to, you know, this is how I'm feeling today. Where are you? How are you feeling? You know, check where people are, but also let people know where you're at and then bring them with you. So that's another way. Yes, talk, but talk also looks differently for different people. And my sister and I were talking this other time, like we're comparing notes on how we're dealing with stuff, like as compared to other people in our family. And we got to a point where we're like, we do need to respect how this person is dealing with this loss because that's their way of dealing with it. So there's no right way. Because sometimes you want to push the person to therapy, chiropractor, you know, and they want to join the gym, and then go to have a club that they go to where, with people that are grieving and whatnot. It's gonna look differently for different people.
Sure. Thank you so much. We are running out of time. I had promised you that it's going to be an hour, but please bear with me. I think now we can take some questions, but I really like the idea of boundaries, or creating boundaries, and also respecting other people's boundaries around these things, because these are very sensitive issues. And I think that's a very important issue for us to consider. And I think we're going to take some questions now. Please do keep them coming. I see there are some questions that we've already received now, and I'm going to try to read some of them. And please also keep them coming. Thandokazi is still here. And if you have not yet shared this video on your timeline, please do share the video so that other people can also get access to it. I saw some people were asking that they have problems with networks, connection. So they were asking if we're going to be saving this video. Yes, the video is going to be saved and it's going to be posted on my page at Mtobi Sikanda, but the page where this live video is happening. So please do come check it again, and also share it with other people so that you also get the content. I see some people are saying really good content. So Thandokazi, you're really brilliant. Okay, I'm going to take the first question. There's a question from Madala Makubela, which says, what are the dangers or consequences of grieving forever or for a very long time?
I don't think there's a timeline. I'm just going to straight out and say, I don't think there's a timeline. So what is important and how you would know that, there's no timeline. No? There's no timeline, but anything that hinders you from living, like being able to function on the daily, obviously is a stressor. So you don't want people who are triggered for life, ne? Because I mean that's borderline depression. So there's no timeline, but what I would say is you want a person to have developed certain tools, and they're able to talk about the pain without breaking down. Because I mean, if I'm falling apart all the time, it means I'm jeopardizing my job, for example. So I won't be able to have this conversation. I won't be able to go to work because I'm falling apart. Then you don't want that. But I think you can, like, I continue to grieve my mother. And and I think that's okay. Like, I continue to do so, but I'm not falling apart. I'm not sinking. I'm able to have a conversation about her, but I'm able to admit that.
That's true. I want to emphasize the point that there is no timeline. And we did speak about this earlier, the fact that it's not something that you can say you've completely gotten over. But I think what is also important is that the point you made earlier about being intentional about the healing process.
Yeah.
Being intentional about the healing process, so that you do not find yourself at a point where you're grieving hinders your daily functioning, right? Yes. I think that is an important point you made there. So there is a comment from Duduzi Nkosinatis Tole saying it's really good content. So Thandokazi, you are massive. There is also a comment. I think I would want to read this one, even though it's a bit long.
Sure.
But I would want to read this one from Sivuyile Paliso. It says, I remember clearly in 2015 when I was dealing with grief of losing my bra, Mapelo Paliso, who was murdered in 2013. Whilst I could accept the fact that he was normal, I struggled to accept that his body was busy decaying, as if there was a chance of return. The thought of him decaying was the most hurting. I cry and I wish I could stop the process. I'd find myself crying and having to tell my wife that it's not her or anything, I just miss my bra. Thandokazi Maseti would call me and say, focus on yourself. It's okay to grieve, but talk about it. See a psychologist and get professional help. Accept to love him in his absence in the body. I started sharing about it and slowly started healing and truly realizing that grieving is a process, and may take years and years. So it's just attesting to what you were saying
Yeah,
earlier,
that's
the
my
fact that
cousin.
it is a process. Yes. So I thought it was quite really good to say, to talk about that. There's also another comment from Musin Kanzo saying, thinking about their bodies decaying is always the worst part. It's like our minds forget that they are no longer there, but are always awaiting a glorious body. So that's also a very powerful way that we find comfort in the fact that there is a glorious body that they are awaiting. But I'm also thinking about a particular thing that just came to my mind as I was reading your cousin's comment, that even the trauma that is attached to how they passed away is something that we have to be deliberate about dealing with, not just the loss itself. So I think that was a powerful one. There's a question from Kanyang Kanzu, which says, my question would be that what happens in the case where one cannot access therapy? As we all know, the public sector has very limited therapists.
I mean, that's a very difficult one. Like you were talking earlier about, like just how, important therapy is. And I'm always haunted by the fact that we push people to go to therapy, but the reality that we sit in South Africa is that not everyone will afford therapy, right? I mean, even who has a medical aid, like you have a cap, So I think there are other alternatives. So if this is a person who is very close to you, I think maybe offer alternatives, and it would need you to know the person. So for someone else, it will, exposing yourself to such a conversation would be one way of it, where you learn that, oh, there's another person, right? And maybe I would want to extend myself to another person and say, look, I've experienced this and I'm still going through this. I can hold space. We can hold space for one another. I think the cheapest way is that, is having loved ones who, if you are blessed or lucky enough, is, would be willing to walk that route with you. But I think exposing yourself to such conversations and just letting people know where you're at, but I'm really struggling. This is where I'm at. This is the part that really hurts. And, I can't access a psychologist. But can you hold space for me? Where a person can create a space where they don't necessarily have to tell you it's going to be okay. You just want someone who's going to center the experience, right? Where you can just talk about it. For some people, journaling really works better, right? People, for example, who have gone through a divorce, would start, and that's a form of loss. So a person would start volunteering in a service that's very similar to that, where they also, facilitate such conversations, or bring those dialogues. And again, based on who you are and how you learn, I mean, how you heal, then you would, you would use that alternative form. And I think in South Africa, and especially now, we really have to be intentional about making it clear that yes, therapy very important. I mean, I'm supposed to say that because I'm a psychologist, but because but I'm also like a Black woman who understands inequalities. It's very important for me to say, but therapy is expensive, and in South Africa, it's not a priority. So what else can we do? And I think focus groups, sessions where safe spaces, journaling, reading, exposing yourself to the material and not running away from that. And on days where you can feel that namhlanje I'm right, feel that, and not try, like, admit that and feel that and sit with that and check back, why do I feel like this? Now, when my father passed away, I used to struggle with cloudy days. And it took me like just really thinking and talking and writing to figure out about why are these days so difficult. For another person, it's like it's Sundays. Sundays are difficult because I used to go on walks with my partner, with my parent or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. It's a very powerful thing. I think the whole idea of alternatives. But I also just want to make this comment that I posted a infographic picture of the South African depression and anxiety group with the contact details that people can contact. They provide these kind of services for free. Obviously, because of the circumstances we are in with COVID and the load of mental health that we are experiencing at this time, they also have quite a lot of people that are coming through. But it is a free service that is available. But also there are quite a lot of like support groups that are online that people can join. You can always search for a support group that relates to the kind of thing you are going through and join that support group. That is also therapeutic. But as we were saying, that we need to think about alternatives. I think the church has a big role to play. Pastoral counseling has a big role to play. Counselors and churches have a big role to play.
Can we train them?
And I think, yeah, of course, they should be trained on how to deal with issues of confidentiality and working with people. And I'm assuming that that's how they even become counselors in churches, right? And I think even family members, there are people that are like elders in your family or elders in the community that people go to for counsel, you know. So those are all spaces that we can use. The key is to not deal with this thing by ourselves.
Absolutely. Can I also add?
Sure.
So what we also found, remember, like we had this conversation in October some year, was that in South Africa, there's a way of going to your clinic. And because there are therapeutic services in certain hospitals. So you can go to your clinic and you would get like some form of a referral to a hospital where there is a psychologist. I mention it because it's there, but it's a very flawed system. We once tried, I'm not sure if it was with you or with Utapelo, but we once tried to get someone into the system and it was just painfully difficult, but it is there. But it's a bit of a mess. And for if you are working, you can go to HR and get, because I think there's something that they can do where they will give you a list of therapies that can offer free services, but only to their people.
Yeah. So I know that there is what they call ICAS, which provides those counseling services for employees in different companies. So companies are mandated actually to have those kinds of services
University
for the employees. So most workplaces would have those services offered to them. But I also know organizations like Emton Jenny Center and VEDS, they do accept, you know, external clients, clients that are external to the university, to provide counseling to them. So those kinds of organizations as well, community organizations, they may have those kinds of services. But the key is that you do not deal with it alone. Seek help. Get a jump start when you need it.
You had to.
There is another question from Nandipa Mpini, which says, how do you deal with the triggers? My mind always connects similar situations and makes it one. How do I learn to separate past experiences? So these issues of triggers, you spoke about how you always be triggered by those experiences. So sometimes, if you just made an example now, if you spend time with this person on Sundays, or maybe there's a particular song that they really liked or they used to play, or maybe there's like tea or something that when you look at this thing and it reminds you of them and you get triggered, this memory of loss gets triggered. How do you deal with that?
So again, you should be triggered, right? Because that means that this person impacted you, like it had an impact in your life. So I think just be patient with the process and be patient with yourself. So obviously the first few years, it's very difficult. You can't even name the pain. And because you have not had time to talk to other people about it, you don't even know, this is where it hurts and this is what hurts, right? So you're constantly getting triggered because at times you are not really aware what is it that is happening and why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. But the more you get exposed to this and you start challenging it, and because you're aware, you'll say it, it's that day, you know, so already you've prepared your mind that this is going to happen. So if, for example, I used to go home in December, and now my brother or, you know, my loved one is no longer there, find a space not to sort of like make that the pain go away, but maybe create a ritual that allows you to celebrate the loss and to think about it, but also to remind yourselves that I'm not alone in this. I think the goal when it comes to pain should never be to avoid it. And I know that's very difficult to say, but I think you have to go through it. When I when I often say feel your feelings, that's exactly what I mean, because also the person on the outside will not know how to, you know, to show up for you if you don't know. Like, go through it, as uncomfortable as it is, but you need to try and get to that point, try and get to that point where you can pinpoint back, this is where it hurts, this is why I get triggered. When this happens, I get triggered. So that as it happens, it doesn't paralyze you. You're just aware that, oh, it's December, that's how I feel like this. Oh, it's his birthday month, of course I feel like this, you know, and sort of, you know, try and find things that you can do. So in our case, it would be, you know, we get together. Like, I remember my sister did, I'm sorry, I keep making, like, it's like it's my talk show. But my sister, I remember how, like, she would just get us on a call and would make jokes like, yo, I'm that when he does this, when he does that, and you cry and you laugh about it, but you think about the person. Or when you triggered, you let them know, but oh, this is what is happening now. Or write about it, write it down, but be aware that this is what is happening. I don't think you should be trying to run away from that, as painful as that sounds.
Yeah. So there is also another question from Shannon Scott saying, do you have any suggestions for teens and grief?
Ooh. Now that's
any comments you can make?
That's a very difficult one, because I don't personally work with teens, but, you know, I want to draw from my experience and from having a little sister now. So my sister was with me in December, and I noticed that, because again, like, I wanted to check where she's at. I wanted to bring the conversation, because it was not coming, you know, like, I panic when people don't talk and break and cry. So I was just trying back. Is this child aware that she doesn't have a father now? So I brought it up, and I would notice that she would pull back and she wouldn't want to talk. And then the next day I would see that she becomes moody. She throws a tantrum at the other one. And I was trying to figure out, when's it going? So I did eventually sit her down and try to speak with her. And I think she was really overwhelmed by the pain. And because I think she's young, you don't really know what to do with it. So you're going to displace it, right? So you're going to be throwing tantrums, refusing to talk to your mother, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And I asked her, so she asked me what she should do, because it's so painful. Like, for her, it was so painful that she just wished it could just go away. So I said, okay, tomorrow, because I've got videos, I've got pictures, like, I have a whole folder. How about we sit together and we go through this? It was very painful. It was very painful, because now it's still very painful on my part. She's also young, you know, and I just exposed her to that and just created a space where we can go through these live shows, we can talk about it, and I would tell jokes about that. Like, just create an environment where it's okay to talk about it, you know. And I think through that, she got to trust me, because now she doesn't, you know, I don't have to check back. So what's happening? You know, she could easily just come to me. And I'm trying to do the same thing with my brother. I'm not, you know, necessarily winning, but I'm trying. And I think now, as a person who has experienced that, you know, experienced loss as a child, if I could have had that, I think I would have benefited a lot, because Tina, we were not given room where we could talk, we could bring mama up in conversation. It was, you know, our situation was also very different, but I don't want to talk about that now. So it just made it very difficult to talk about her, even with each other, because you're like, you don't want to hurt the other person, can't say it right. So I think create an environment where, and make them trust you. And when a child has opened up to you, and has, you know, has become vulnerable with you, you need to show, like, like just connect to them in a way that it's easy for them to come back again. Because sometimes you pull, you know, you push a child, like you pull them down and say, "But how you deaf? I don't want to deal with this." And sometimes it's from pain that you say that, but then you hurt them, and you know, now they are grieving the one parent they've lost, and they're also grieving this relationship that's dying, you know. And I think that's very dangerous. Okay.
It is. And I'm just thinking as you were talking about how also sometimes we avoid having these conversations with them, thinking that we're actually protecting them from the pain, when we're actually not.
You know,
when you are openly having this conversation, you are showing them that it is okay to speak about this. You are showing them that it is okay to feel pain.
Yes.
And you help them talk through it.
Absolutely.
Right? So because sometimes, as you were saying, they don't know what to do with it. But when, as an adult, you take them through the process, you create a safe space, as you were saying, a safe space for them to speak about their pains. Then you're opening up the environment for them to feel safe to cry about it, to talk about it, and feel sad about it, and know that, you know, they're not going to be judged or chastised because of that. So I think that is also a very powerful one. I'm gonna end now the question session, because I think I've done most of the questions, if not all of them. I see there is a comment here by Cindy Kati. Maseti says, at first I didn't know what grieving was until I lost about 4 people in 1 year who were very close to me. It's never easy, but to me, I had to hold strong because I didn't want anyone to see that I am the weakest point. But at times goes kuyazameka uphola, but not ngam. Hey, go rough, guys. So it's just so it's just that issue of being strong. And I thought about this earlier when you were speaking about how at the point where you felt like you were pushing your friends away, you had this thing in your mind, I've got my family, we're such a close-knit family. But I'm thinking, in your mind, you did not also think about how they are also dealing with the loss themselves. And having to be strong for you and be there for you is also could break them, because they feel like, okay, I have to be strong for Thandokazi as my little sister, my little brother. So in order for me to be strong for her, I have to abandon my own process of dealing with this loss so that I can allow her to deal with it. So that is why it is always good to also think about the other relationships and friendships of people that you have around you who might not be going through that experience of loss, so that they can be there for you, so that the pressure is not too much.
So that's a very big one, hey, because I remember this one time I had to think, like I learned that, but it must be so hard. And I mean, because now everyone knows someone who's lost another person, right? And so we do have to have this conversation and bring people, you know, Sebaswandes, and have that conversation about how to show up for another person. But when we are experiencing loss, sometimes we close, like you just close yourself in, and it's like you are hoping that people will just figure it out. And I imagine that it's not fair on those who are around us, because it's also just paralyzing them. Like in my case, now that I'm older, like with the friends that I have, I would at least indicate, and I still am that kind of person who needs time on my own, because I think if people cuddled me and were always just, you know, with me, I think I would struggle. So I do suffocate at times, and it helps that I stay on my own, because I would go through something, but I would let you know, so that when you're checking up on me and you're like, "Hypo, why Punje?" And then what I see my friends doing is, like, after a day, they'll be like, "I noticed that yesterday this is what was happening. I want you to know that I'm here for you," you know. And then now I would have gathered up strength, you know, courage to say, "Hey, this is what's happening." And over time, I've learned to just make them know, but this is what is happening, because it's also just not fair on those who are around us, you know. As much as yes, grieve, you know, but sometimes we do harm those who are around us. And I imagine that you also just feel paralyzed by, how do I show up for you? What do I do? You know, and maybe that's a whole conversation, Yobana, you know, caring for the, I don't know, like how to show up for people.
Yeah, it was one of the questions I wanted to ask, but I really had run out of time. Maybe we'll have another conversation. It would depend if people want to hear about that. If you want to talk about how to support people who are dealing and maybe want to have a conversation, hear a conversation about that with Thandokazi, please let me know in the comments and I'll bring her again. I see there are also some very good comments, good feedback about how people are experiencing this, and it does show me that this is something a lot of people are experiencing and a lot of people are relating to this conversation. And I would appreciate and really encourage people to keep this conversation going, because as you said, it is conversations like this that also are part of the healing process. Keep the conversation going on the comments, keep on sharing this video, keep on telling people, and let this be a normal conversation that we have around the dinner table. You know, as difficult as it is an important conversation because of the degree and the gravity of the losses that people are experiencing right now. So let it be a conversation that we do not shy away from, because that is part of the process of healing. So thank you so much, Thandokazi, for being here with us. Your last words to the people who are here.
Oh, I think just be patient with yourself, be kind with yourself, you know, and do what you can do, you know. And for those who are caring for friends who've lost loved ones, keep showing up, you know. Keep showing up, you know, and let's just keep talking. Like, I really think we will heal through talking, whatever talking means, but let's just keep having that conversation. And yeah, I do want to say that most of the times my DMs are open for such conversations. I will let you know when I'm not able to, you know, because I do practice what I preach with is boundaries. So when on that day I don't feel like I can, I will let you know with kindness. But otherwise, I'm always happy to have such conversations. I do believe that, you know, like, we should be sharing these notes, you know. I don't think my sister, who is 11, has to go through everything that I went through when I'm here, you know, to give out a scope. As much as Bana, it's gonna look differently for her, but you know, like, she has me now, you know, so there are certain things that I could protect her from. And I think it goes with our friends, with our loved ones, with those who are close, who are around us. Let's have the conversation. Let's create spaces where it's safe, you know, and let's show up for people, man, and just keep checking up on our loved ones. So yeah, and thank you so much, Mto, for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
It was quite an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I was worried it was gonna fall apart, but I was ready for it.
You did very well. You did very well. And where can people follow you? Because I know you also kind of try to keep these conversations going even on your socials as well.
I do try. I am on Twitter, but not as active as I should be. And I don't really talk about these as I should. At Thandokazi, I think on Instagram, I think it's at Thandokazi as well, or Thandokazi. On Facebook, it's Thandokazi Maseti. I think Facebook may be a better way. You know, we can start there. But yeah, follow me on Instagram.
Okay. Good. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. We are continuing with these live sessions. Next week, we will be talking about living with depression. I have also a very special guest who is a social worker, but is also living with a mental health condition. She's going to speak about that from a personal experience point of view. And we're going to be talking also about this conversation of how do we support people who are dealing with these mental health related conditions. Please do check out the event. I'm going to create an event in the beginning of the week. Do sign up to say you're going to be coming in, and also share it with other people like you did with this one, because it really got a lot of coverage, and we really appreciated that. And last thing, I have these 3 books that I would like you to get. I have The Jumpstart Effect, which is my latest book, The Jumpstart Effect, Why Human Connections Matter. It speaks to these issues of relationships that we're talking about here, the issue of support, and a whole lot of things. We've done quite a lot of videos around this book, and we continue to speak about this. I have a whole lot of my own experiences that relates to these issues. I have I think it's chapter 4 of the book, titled Stuck in the Past. It's the first chapter of the book that I wrote. At some point I took it out and I brought it back again because I felt like I was oversharing, but I think it does speak to some of these things of dealing with the past. There is this one. So this one is 250 rands. The jumpstart effect is 250 rands. And then there is this one, which is for students. It's titled Incubating Excellence, a Practical Guide to Achieving Academic Excellence. If you want to be a super cost shower, this is a book for you. I know people are going to university, or you know someone who's going to university, who's doing matric. It's a very good book. It's written by someone who's got over 34 academic excellence awards. So I'm talking about something I really know very well. And there is this one, which is Pushed by Passion, the power of passion in pursuit of purpose. It speaks about living a purpose-driven life and how the idea of passion is what drives us in the direction of purpose. So it would really help you figure out the whole issue of living on purpose, because we do not be freestyling our lives. We've got a purpose. We're created by God for a purpose, and we have to fulfill that purpose, because one day we'll have to account on it. So thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, you will have to account.
Can I also just say something? Like, thank you so much, Mto. For this time. So the last time we spoke, it was in October, Mental Health Awareness Month. And we spoke about how it's important to just continue having this conversation throughout. And you're just sticking to that. So thank you so much for this space. And well done, man, you know, for always having, like, pushing us to have difficult conversations. Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I try. Okay, guys, I will see you next week. Please continue giving your dreams a chance, because that is what we're preaching in these live videos. Join us again next week. I love you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.